In just a moment, Crimea shook as Ukraine launched a sudden drone strike on the Saki air base. Within minutes, 5 Russian warplanes, including Su-30SM and Su-24 jets, were destroyed, causing losses worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Flames and explosions turned what was once Russia's fortress in the sky into ruins. The Crimean bridge came to a halt with traffic stretching for miles, while civilians fled in panic. Moscow tried to deny the scale of the disaster, yet satellite images and civilian videos told the world a different story. The belief that Crimea was untouchable collapsed overnight. But how did Ukraine manage to deliver such a bold strike? Why was Saki, one of Russia's key air bases in the Black Sea, so vulnerable? And could this mark the beginning of a major shift in the entire war? Let's find out with Navy secrets. The calm over Crimea was shattered when Ukraine launched a sudden drone strike on the Saki air base, one of Russia's most valuable military sites on the peninsula. Explosions ripped across the runway and aircraft parking areas, sending flames and heavy smoke into the night sky. According to Western reports and OSINT groups, at least 5 Russian warplanes were destroyed or severely damaged, including Su-30SM fighters and Su-24 bombers. These were not old machines gathering dust, but active aircraft flown daily in missions over the Black Sea and southern Ukraine. Their loss meant hundreds of millions of dollars gone, and a sharp reduction in Russia's ability to project power in the region. Satellite images confirmed the devastation, showing dark craters across the tarmac and hangars torn apart. Civilian videos captured fire rising near the runway, while ammunition depots exploded for hours. Moscow attempted to dismiss the event as minor, yet the evidence was too visible to deny. For a Kremlin that had long portrayed Crimea as secure since the 2014 annexation, the strike was both humiliating and revealing. It showed not only a gap in defenses, but also a loss of confidence that spread far beyond the base itself. The precision of the strike is what made it extraordinary. Ukrainian drones slipped through layers of radar and missile defenses that were supposed to shield the site, striking directly at the core of Russia's air presence in Crimea. This revealed that Moscow's claim of full control was more illusion than fact, and that modern drone warfare, combined with intelligence and planning, could cripple even the most fortified positions. For Ukraine, this was more than tactical success. By hitting warplanes rather than civilian sites, Kyiv showed its goal was to dismantle Russia's combat power. The timing was also painful for Moscow, already facing sanctions that cut off access to microchips and composites vital for aircraft production. Replacing advanced fighters like the Su-30SM is not simple. It requires resources, engineers, and time Russia does not possess in abundance. The shock extended far beyond the battlefield. Authorities froze traffic on the Crimean bridge, imposing manual checks on thousands of vehicles. Queues stretched over 30 kilometers, with drivers waiting up to 7 hours. These scenes of gridlock and panic reminded Russians that the war is no longer distant, but now pressing directly on territory once considered untouchable. This was not only about planes or ammunition destroyed. It was about breaking confidence and showing that Ukraine could strike deep where Russia least expected. To understand why Ukraine chose Saki, we need to examine the strategic role this airbase plays in Russia's wider defense network across Crimea. The Saki airbase is more than a runway. It is the centerpiece of Russia's military strength in Crimea. Positioned on the western edge of the peninsula, it is the largest airbase in the region and home to the 43rd Naval Assault Aviation Regiment. This unit has been at the heart of Moscow's campaign since the beginning of the war. From here, Su-30SM fighters patrol the skies over the Black Sea, while Su-24 bombers launch missions against Ukrainian cities such as Kherson and Mikhailov. These planes are not symbolic trophies. They are the daily tools Russia relies on to pressure Ukraine south and to maintain a sense of dominance over the region. Without them, Moscow loses both striking power and the ability to claim control of the skies. What makes Saki even more critical is that it is not only an airfield, but also a command and control hub. radar systems base their guide air defense units across Crimea, while reconnaissance flights operate from the same location to track Ukrainian movements. The base also manages logistics, fuel, spare parts, and ammunition pass through Saki to support both aircraft and missile batteries. In effect, Saki operates as the central nervous system of Russia's presence on the peninsula. Even a short disruption creates delays in supply, weakens radar coverage, and reduces coordination. This directly impacts the Black Sea Fleet, which depends on air cover and electronic support from Saki to operate safely. By hitting Saki, Ukraine could paralyze several layers of Russia's war effort with a single strike, sending a shock far beyond the base itself. The aircraft stationed at Saki underline why it was such a tempting target. The Su-30SM, built as Russia's answer to NATO's F-15, is a multi-role fighter that can handle long-range combat, precision ground strikes, and even airborne command duties. Each one costs about $50 million. But the greater challenge for Moscow is that sanctions now block access to the microchips and composites needed to replace them. Losing Su-30SM Saki was therefore a loss of money, technology, and time. The Su-24 bombers added further weight. Built for low-altitude penetration and heavy payloads, they were central to Russia's strikes on southern Ukraine. By disabling several in one raid, Ukraine reduced Moscow's offensive options and forced the redistribution of aircraft to less efficient bases further away. The link with the Black Sea Fleet made the strike even more effective. Saki provided crucial air cover for ships and secured sea routes, so damage there meant higher risks for Russia's navy. The psychological effect of the attack was as serious as the physical losses. For years, Moscow assured Russian civilians and military families living in Crimea that the peninsula was safe and fully defended. Propaganda framed it as a fortress, and Saki was central to that image. But when explosions engulfed the runways, that illusion collapsed. Satellite photos confirmed the destruction, while civilian videos spread panic across social media. Traffic jams on the Crimean Bridge stretched for more than 30 kilometers as authorities tightened security checks, creating hours of delay. For civilians, the message was clear. Crimea was no longer untouchable. For the Kremlin, the attack was a blow to its narrative of strength, showing that even its most prized assets could be breached. Ukraine's decision to strike Saki, therefore, carried both military and political weight. It crippled Russia's most strategic airbase, while undermining public trust in Moscow's ability to defend its territory. Because of this importance, Ukraine did not move hastily. Instead, it spent months preparing a detailed plan, using intelligence, deception, and advanced drone tactics to make sure the operation would succeed. The attack on Saki was not a hasty move. Ukraine spent months preparing, using intelligence networks, drones, and electronic monitoring to understand the base. Teams intercepted radio frequencies to learn how Russian pilots and ground crews communicated. They mapped when radars were switched on, when runways were busiest, and when aircraft sat exposed on open aprons. Daily flight patterns of Su-30SM fighters and Su-24 bombers were tracked, revealing predictable routines. Even fuel deliveries and ammunition loading times were studied to see when the base was most vulnerable. This intelligence campaign also searched for flaws in Russia's air defense. On paper, the surface-to-air missile network looked powerful, but blind zones always exist. By the time planning was complete, Kiev knew not only where to strike, but also how to bypass defenses Moscow had long considered secure. When the strike finally came, it was a storm instead of a single wave. Ukraine launched several groups of UAVs at once, each approaching from different directions. Some drones acted as decoys, flying false routes and jamming radar to pull Russian fire. Others carried precision targeting systems and aimed straight at critical points. Long-range UAVs with low radar signatures made detection harder, while the divided assault forced defenses to scatter attention. Once Russian radars tracked the decoys, the real attackers slipped through. Analysts pointed out that within minutes explosions erupted across the base, at aircraft shelters, the runway, and the ammunition depot. Russia's air defenses designed to repel large planes or missiles were overwhelmed by swarms of cheap drones. The outcome highlighted a painful truth. Billion-dollar systems can be cracked by weapons that cost only thousands if they are used with the right timing and coordination. The coordination of the strike quickly drew attention. Military experts noted the synchronization of waves, the precision of impact, and the ability to adjust routes mid-air suggested more than manual control. Some believe artificial intelligence played a role. AI could calculate flight paths, manage altitude and speed, and prevent collisions while ensuring all groups reach targets in the same time window. If this was true, Ukraine showed that algorithms and software can influence battles as much as soldiers or commanders. Kiev has not confirmed the use of AI, but the signs suggest a new stage in modern conflict. If Saki was directed with AI support, it may be remembered as one of the first major strikes where digital intelligence and low-cost hardware combined to dismantle high-value assets. This possibility adds another layer of significance, showing how fast technology is reshaping war itself. The choice of targets revealed how deliberate the plan was. Ukraine did not waste drones on empty hangars or symbolic buildings. Instead, it aimed at aircraft parking zones, ammunition depots, and the runway. Striking jets on the ground destroyed Su-30SMs and Su-24s before they could launch. Blasting the ammunition depot caused secondary explosions that burned for hours, spreading chaos and crippling logistics. Damaging the runway grounded surviving planes, cutting Russia's ability to launch new sorties when they were needed most. These strikes multiplied the effect of every drone. What looked like a limited raid became a decisive operation that crippled Russia's combat power in Crimea. For Moscow, the message was devastating. Even its most guarded bases were vulnerable to planning, precision, and innovation. This meticulous preparation created the conditions for devastating losses, leaving many of Russia's key aircraft destroyed or disabled, and forcing Moscow to face the reality of a weakened air force. The attack on Saki Air Base inflicted a blow that Russia could not conceal. Reports confirmed that one Su-30SM fighter jet was destroyed, another heavily damaged, and 3 Su-24 bombers rendered unfit for service. A massive ammunition depot also erupted in flames, burning for hours and spreading close to the runway. Satellite images and civilian videos left no room for denial, showing smoke clouds and secondary explosions. These were not ordinary losses. Each Su-30SM is valued between $35 million and $50 million, but the real cost goes far beyond the sticker price. Every fighter carries advanced radar, avionics, and engines that cannot be replaced quickly under sanctions. Built to counter NATO jets, such as the F-15, the Su-30SM is one of Russia's most important multi-role fighters. The Su-24, though an older platform, continues to carry heavy bombs and strikes on southern Ukraine. By losing several jets in one raid, Moscow's ability to maintain air dominance over the Black Sea was reduced, leaving gaps in its power projection and weakening morale. The destruction of the ammunition depot multiplied the impact. Explosions that lasted for hours revealed the scale of the losses. Stockpiles of rockets, bombs, and guided missiles destroyed in minutes. Replacing them requires a defense industry operating at full pace. Yet Russia's industry is already struggling. Western sanctions cut access to microchips, composites, and modern engine parts, forcing Moscow to depend on imports from China or low-grade domestic alternatives. This slows production and reduces reliability. Even though Russia raised its defense budget in 2025 to nearly $100 billion, money cannot solve bottlenecks when the needed technology is unavailable. Factories face shortages of skilled labor and advanced components, leaving new aircraft programs delayed. Maintenance of older planes is becoming harder as spare parts run dry. Every depot destroyed at Saki is not only a financial loss, but also the erasure of months of factory work, further exposing the fragility of Russia's supply chain under sustained pressure. The deeper challenge for Moscow is that these losses cannot be quickly replaced. Each Su-30SM destroyed represents not just millions of dollars, but years of engineering, scarce materials, and industrial capacity wasted. Every depot that burns means thousands of hours of labor gone, with no easy way to recover. Under normal conditions, a major power might replace such losses within months, but sanctions and inefficiency prevent Russia from doing so. The strike at Saki highlighted how cheap drones, costing only a fraction of a fighter jet, can destroy assets worth hundreds of millions. It proved that asymmetric warfare can grind down even the most heavily armed adversary. For Kyiv, the success demonstrated that careful planning and innovative tactics can balance Russia's numerical advantage. For Moscow, it was a warning that time and resources are no longer on its side, and that every destroyed jet or depot weakens its ability to sustain a long war of attrition. The damage did not stop at military losses. The attack also triggered a chain reaction across society and deeply shook the psychology of civilians living in Crimea. The Kremlin tried hard to minimize the damage at Saki, but the evidence was overwhelming. Satellite data from NASA's firm system recorded intense fire signatures, while civilian videos showed flames consuming fighter jets and secondary blasts across the base. These clips spread quickly on social media, watched not only by Western analysts, but also by ordinary Russians who could no longer ignore what had happened. For years, Moscow had claimed that Crimea was fully protected, yet the destruction shown online contradicted every official statement. This gap between propaganda and reality weakened the Kremlin's authority, making citizens question whether the government could defend them. The more the authorities insisted that the situation was under control, the more obvious the truth became, and that truth carried psychological weight far beyond the battlefield. The panic extended immediately to Crimea's most important lifeline, the Kerch Bridge. Authorities shut down traffic for strict inspections, forcing every car to be checked by hand. The result was chaos. Lines stretched over 30 kilometers, and frustrated drivers reported waiting 5 to 7 hours to cross. At the peak of the jam, nearly 2,000 vehicles were immobilized, creating one of the worst traffic crises since the bridge opened. For Russian vacationers who had come to Crimea expecting leisure, the experience turned into a nightmare of waiting, stress, and uncertainty. This was not just a matter of inconvenience. It revealed deep fear that the bridge itself might be the next Ukrainian target. When a single airbase strike could cause paralysis on the peninsula's only road link to Russia, it showed that the system was fragile. The disruption exposed how vulnerable Moscow's grip on Crimea had become, because one raid had shaken transport, tourism, and public order all at once. For civilians living on the peninsula, the attack delivered a powerful shock. Many had believed Crimea was safe, but the destruction of modern jets shattered that illusion. Families rushed to stockpile essentials, others stayed indoors, and rumors of more raids fueled anxiety. Soldiers were not immune either, watching their most advanced aircraft destroyed inside what was supposed to be a secure base damaged morale badly. Relatives of service members grew nervous, questioning whether Moscow could truly shield them from future strikes. This erosion of confidence matters as much as material damage, because wars are fought not only with weapons, but also with belief and determination. Every image of burning planes, every stalled line on the Kerch Bridge, and every fearful glance at the sky reminded people that Crimea was not invincible. In this sense, Ukraine achieved more than tactical success. It undermined the psychological stability of both civilians and soldiers, planting doubt in the very foundation of Russia's presence on the peninsula. That spreading insecurity soon transformed into action, as officers, families, and Russian settlers quietly began leaving Crimea in the days after the attack. The attack on Saki produced not only military destruction, but also a social reaction that exposed the weakness of Russia's position in Crimea. After repeated strikes, families of officers, defense technicians, and support staff began leaving the peninsula quietly. What once seemed like a secure posting for Russian personnel had turned into a dangerous trap. Local residents noticed the movement, and rumors of planned evacuations spread through towns and villages, deepening the sense of fear. Open-source intelligence groups in Ukraine confirmed that nearly all families of senior commanders in the Black Sea Fleet had already left. This was not just a private decision. It sent a strong signal to the community. If the highest-ranking officers did not believe Crimea was safe, why should ordinary civilians stay? For years, Moscow had promoted settlement programs, encouraging thousands of Russians to move to the peninsula to change its demographics. But the retreat of these families revealed a sharp reversal, showing that even those once considered loyal supporters no longer trusted the Kremlin's promise of security. Reports from European outlets suggested that Moscow had prepared plans to evacuate up to 250,000 people in phases. This number included military families, defense industry workers, railway and port employees, as well as children and the elderly. Organizing such an operation demonstrates that the Kremlin itself recognizes Crimea is vulnerable to future strikes. It is not only a tactical precaution. It reflects the fear that Ukraine may hit more air bases, supply hubs, or even the Kerch Bridge. For many families, especially those who had moved to Crimea after 2014, leaving became the only rational option. The meaning of this exodus is far greater than logistics. A strong military depends on the morale of its personnel and the stability of their families. When those families are moved out, confidence collapses. Each departing household becomes evidence that faith in Moscow's protection is breaking down. The retreat also sends a clear message to the international community. Russia understands its position in Crimea is fragile, even as its leaders claim otherwise. In the end, the silent movement of thousands is not only about transport. It is a visible sign that fear, doubt, and psychological pressure are reshaping the future of the peninsula, creating cracks in what Moscow once portrayed as unshakable control. From these developments, one can draw a larger conclusion about the strategic meaning of the Saki attack. The attack on Saki stands as proof of how modern war is shifting toward asymmetric methods, where cheap drones can cripple equipment worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Ukraine's ability to strike deep inside Crimea shows that strength is no longer measured only by the cost of technology, but by planning, speed, and intelligence. A drone that costs less than a car can burn through the pride of Russia's Air Force and expose the weakness of its defenses. Yet the strike was more than a military victory. It was also a psychological and political blow against the myth of invulnerability that Moscow has used to justify its control of Crimea. The world saw that even Russia's most fortified bases could fall, and that civilians living under occupation are never truly safe. The final message is clear. Ukraine has shown that Crimea is no longer Russia's safe zone, and ultimately, Crimea is Ukraine. Every conflict tells us something about the world we live in, but it also reminds us why peace is worth fighting for. This channel is not just about reporting battles. It's about helping people see the bigger picture. If you believe knowledge can change the way we understand war, then share this video. Add your voice in the comments and subscribe so you never miss the next analysis. Together, we can learn the hard truths of conflict and spread the message that peace must always remain the goal.